Hello, I'm Rich DiPentima, host of So Much for Seniors. We have a great program for you this episode. We will learn about how to make plans for the future, hear about a fun book to read, and get to know an artist who is inspired by music, and also stay tuned for a unique insight into what restaurants have to offer. So let's get started.
Extended Family is proud to be a supporting sponsor of So Much for Seniors and the Senior Salute segment.
Welcome to Senior Salute, where we honor local seniors whose achievements have made a significant contribution to our Seacoast community. We are pleased to have artist Roger Goldenberg in the studio today. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you for having me.
So, Roger, as everybody knows that watches the show, I do a pre-interview with the guests before they come on, and one of the interesting things you told me was that you started your career as a geologist. So how did you get from stones and rocks to the world of art?
Yeah, stones, rocks, and glaciers. Well, I always wanted to be an artist, though. As a youngster, I didn't really have the words to, I wouldn't have said that, but I liked making things. And as I got older, as a young adult, and when I was in college, I was taking art classes. But I just didn't understand, how to do it, how to become an artist. And after a number of years, after geology, I worked in the oil field for a brief amount of time and found it incredibly boring, and became a carpenter. And I did that for about 10 years, worked as a cabinet maker. But the idea of becoming an artist was always nipping at my heels, and it was nagging at me. And I'd promised myself by the time that I was 30, I would either get back to school and study art or give it up,
So you ended up doing that. You got a bachelor's in art and a master's
Yes.
in art from the school in North Carolina.
That's right. University of North Carolina in Greensboro offered me a full scholarship to get my master's degree.
So you have this wonderful studio over in the Button Factory, and you brought a wonderful sample of the work you do. And
Meet Uncle Wiggly.
this is Uncle Wiggly.
Yes.
Can you tell us how did Uncle Wiggly come to be created? What medium and what's the basis for this artwork?
Well, all of my work is improvisational and very colorful, and because of those ingredients, plus it has a lot of the qualities that music have. So I call my work visual jazz, and it begins with a drawing on the floor. I roll out a big piece of canvas and I start improvising drawings, coming up with a shape that I like on the canvas. Then I take scissors and I just cut it out, apply it to plywood, and then start the process of building the surface, gessoing and adding other materials to create an image that pleases me, usually emphasizing tempo, rhythm, and movement especially.
Now, when you paint, you say visual jazz. Do you paint to music, or do you have a combination where you incorporate both art and music simultaneously?
Well, I use the music as an inspiration and as a motivator. Generally, I do not paint a song. I'm not interpreting the music. I use it just to energize me. But recently, I've started a project that I call In Ears and Eyes, where I'm actually interpreting music and having a conversation with jazz musicians. We perform as though I'm one of the members in the band, and we create conversations back and forth between the visual art and music. But in the studio, sometimes I even have it quiet.
Yeah, when you do your work, you mentioned to me that a lot of your work is a metaphor for real world activities and real world issues. For example, you mentioned the banners to me, and that those banners represented things to do with climate change. How do you incorporate the metaphors in your work?
Well, the metaphors are kind of far-ranging, but in the instance you're talking about, climate change and weather have been a concern of mine. Probably, I was always out in the outdoors, hiking as a naturalist and also a geologist. I just had the idea that it would be interesting to explore the energy of storms and weather through the painting. And so I started making these oblong paintings that I called inspiration banners, which then became a printmaking project, which you saw in my studio. They're smallish prints that are weather that I've imagined that we have not seen yet. So, and they also include stratification, which I link to the geology background.
Quickly, you mentioned to me as well that rectangles are sort of like confining. They don't really represent the world as it is. Could you elaborate on that whole thing about the rectangular shape versus what you've created in Uncle Wiggily?
Well, again, speaking for metaphors, I try to have all of my work be a metaphor for my life. And as we were studying art, the Renaissance made a big splash a few hundred years ago, and they were very intrigued with the idea of looking out a window into the world. So there's the frame of the rectangle. And when I was in graduate school, I was realizing that for me, the images in my mind are just snippets and vignettes, kind of a collage of images, and I wanted to try to express that visually. And I just, and also was, as I was aging, becoming aware that life is so much made up of serendipity and chance, so that confining something to a rectangle just, to me, didn't create a visual metaphor for life as I was experiencing it. So the irregular shapes emerged from that.
Well, Raj, I wish we had more time to speak. Maybe we'll have you back in the future, and I wish you well in your endeavors, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rich.